Now, I know a lot of you out there don't remember the year 1976. Mainly because, like me, a lot of you weren't even born. You weren't even thought about. In fact, your parents were probably still extremely young. So, I can understand if a lot of you don't know what I'm talking about in the next couple of minutes. This is a part of a series that I may begin. It's really going to depend on how you guys react to it. And this is where I look back at some of the classic albums of all time. And we're not just talking about in metal, we're talking about in music, period. Now, I am going to be a little bit selective because, let's face it, some albums I just don't have the liberty to talk about because I don't know much about them. This is one that I know a little bit about, and I think it's kind of important because it holds many different distinctions. And that's the album Boston, their self-titled record from 1976. This is an album that has some really awesome distinctions, as I mentioned in the introduction. For example, this is an album that has 8 tracks that all have been on classic rock or some sort of rock radio station at one point or another. How many other bands can really say that they've had every song on their album, and especially their debut album, be on the radio? I really can't think of any others aside from this one, so that's something that maybe you guys can input for me, but I don't think it's happened. This is a really powerful rock and roll record. Classic rock enthusiasts, if they don't have this in their collection, they're not really an enthusiast. Why do I say that? Because for a debut, 17 million records sold overall is pretty damn awesome. Yeah, that's right. It took only about 3 months for this album to go gold, and another 3 months for it to go platinum. And at the 10-year anniversary, right around that point, they were up to about diamond status, which is 10 times platinum here in America. But 17 times platinum overall, wow, that's something else. I don't think that's something you may ever see again. Even though Adele's CD is doing well, the 7 million copies that she sold is worldwide. It's not necessarily just here in America. So Boston's impact was certainly felt. And you really can't blame all the fans that got out and purchased this album and really became fans of the band. More Than a Feeling is an anthemic song, one of those songs that you recognize almost instantaneously whenever it comes on the radio. And it's also a song that's been used so much in pop culture, whether it be on television shows, campaign ads. Yeah, it was used as a campaign ad in the 2008 election for a guy. And other avenues where you instantly know who Boston is already just from that track. However, the song that really speaks the most to me is Peace of Mind, track number 2. I really love this song. I love the hook, I love the guitar work, and I love the lyrics. It's something that is very powerful. It's the kind of song that you want to listen to after you have a really good night. Either that or something where you just are trying to figure out your problems, and the song kind of just has this mystical and magical way of making everything seem a little bit more clear. Foreplay Long Time is another great track that you're going to hear on the radio a lot. Rock and Roll is one that I've heard on occasion. Let Me Take You Home is another one that it's not as often that you hear it, but it's happened. Surprisingly enough, this 17 times platinum album only made it to number 3 on the Billboard charts, which is kind of amazing to know, considering the album sales. This also speaks of a different time here in the music business. A band such as Boston selling that many copies of their debut album, it's almost unheard of today, if not completely unheard of. You really see all those copies being sold by already established artists from the late 1990s and early 2000s. You know the names. You know, names like Eminem. However, someone like Adele kind of comes out of nowhere, even though 19, her first album, sold very well also. So Boston only hitting number 3 is a shock, which means that there were 2 other groups, there were 2 other albums that, well, were doing better than that. However, Boston's going to be the album that's going to gain the most recognition, because the 17 million copies of this debut album in 1976 that were sold account for more than half of their total album sales. Yeah, they weren't able to really christen themselves and measure up to the success of the debut. However, they did put out a couple of other records after that that were pretty decent. However, their self-titled debut will constantly and always remain classic. This is an album from a time where music was really, really important to a lot of people. The 1970s. Disco was huge, but out of the gallows came a lot of good classic rock bands, not to mention there were some classic progressive bands, and of course the birth of metal with the new wave of British heavy metal. Boston's self-titled album will forever hold an important place in the annals of music history, and it's certainly an album that if you've not listened to yet, it's something that you got to do before you die. You got to be able to tell everybody, yeah, I've listened to that album. I don't care if I was born in 1995, I know who Boston is, and that album's awesome. Thanks, guys, and if you guys, like I said, want to see more of these, let me know. Give me a comment. Take care.